Welcome to Media Melanie Talks TV. I'm Melanie, and today I'm back to talk about Silo on Apple TV+, Season 2, Episode 4, called The Harmonium. And again, just a friendly reminder, I have not read any of these books, so this is just purely based on the television show. If you've read the books, please keep any spoilers out of the comments. Thank you so much for that. And before we dive in, if you could hit that subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so we're not even halfway through the season, and I'm starting to have some concerns. The first 25 minutes of this episode, I'm kind of sitting there. I even picked up my phone, scrolling a little bit, which is always a sign that my interest could potentially be waning. The big reveal of the season obviously cannot be that there is a cyclical nature to these rebellions. There has got to be more at play. We can't just have silo chases, fighting, Juliette MacGyvering and Captain Nemoing, giving Solo this therapy for another 6 episodes, right? There has got to be a bigger picture here. But they set the bar pretty high at the end of Season 1, giving us the big reveal that there were more silos. What could be a bigger reveal than that? I'm hoping it's something because, again, we've got quite a few more episodes to go before we hit the finale at Episode 10. And I'm all for drama, and maybe this really is all momentum building, but I'm kind of finding Silo 17 to be a little bit of a snooze. I need Juliette to get back to Silo 18. I just want more, and I want some deeper reveals that are going to drop my jaw right to the floor. And so far, I'm just not getting that vibe from Season 2. But we are still pretty early here, so time will tell. This episode did have something interesting. All of this talk about the cosmos and stars and celestial bodies, right? Meadows and Lucas had this conversation. Lucas, of course, enjoyed going out and charting the stars in the cafeteria, which he didn't even know were called stars until Meadow filled him in. But they've got this general concept of how the celestial bodies work. Going back to one of my early theories from the season, could this mean that they are actually not on Earth and that they're on the moon, that maybe humanity had to repopulate somewhere else, or even if not the moon, perhaps another planet? How far into the future are they? Could they have achieved space travel? Could Earth have blown up or become toxic or whatever that drove them off of Earth somewhere else? And the big twist will be that they're actually not on Earth. That might be absolutely wild, as I said before, but I'm not ruling it out. Why else would they be talking about all of the astrology of it all, right? And it could be that the environment outside isn't toxic radiation from a nuke or something like that, but maybe it is an atmospheric situation. They can't survive with the atmosphere outside. We did see that dust storm that killed the inhabitants of Silo 17 when they went outside. They were able to survive for a little while. So maybe it's not a radiation dust. Maybe it does have more to do with the toxic nature of whatever planet or celestial body that they're inhabiting. I guess we will have to wait till the end of the season or series to find out if that theory has any legs, but for now, I'm keeping it in my back pocket. And one other note on that too, in a previous episode, Solo had asked Juliette the position of the sun. Why else would they bring that up if there was not some sort of space thing at play here, right? I don't know, I'm starting to connect some dots. Maybe these dots are all going to form a Silo constellation of inhabitation on another planet. We will see. Some other standouts from this episode before I dive in more, all the talk about animals. We have Solo talking about the circus, talking about elephants. Over in Silo 18, we have Meadows with the VR, who's got some monkeys and frogs. And I immediately thought, is this just a big metaphor for the fact that they are essentially in a circus or a zoo? They are caged animals. And if this is a bigger metaphor, is there a bigger force at play watching them? Could this be some sort of experiment and there is an overseer of it all? It's funny because if you happen to have watched From on MGM Plus, that's been a big theory over there. And it's interesting too because in this episode, we got references to jarred peaches and we got some strange numbers that look like they could be dates. So for all my Frumily out there, you know what I'm talking about. And by the way, if you have not watched From on MGM Plus, exceptional show, kind of in the vein of Silo a little bit. So seriously, go check that one out. And just back to that metaphor of all of these people being essentially in cages in a zoo. How does Solo know so much? Does he have VR goggles back in the vault? Is it just books that he's read? Could there be a secret room behind the vault that is actually a trove of artifacts like you would see inside of an Egyptian pyramid? He seems to have a lot more information than he should. He was IT Shadow, and IT does seem to be the collector of all of the information, but something about his mindset, I can't tell if his mind has just been so impacted from the trauma, PTSD, and being alone for so many years, or if Solo does have the mentality of a child, maybe some sort of learning disability or something, which would explain why he was sitting next to this girl Lapis in the classroom, which really didn't add up. And Juliette also was like, why would you be sitting in here next to a child? He obviously was not the teacher. But if he did have some sort of a learning disability or whatever, why would he be the IT Shadow? And why would IT have trusted him to go lock himself in the vault? Is it because he's easily controllable and easily suggestible and knew that he would follow directions well? Because he's lived up to that. He has followed his job. He takes this very seriously. And as we saw, he felt urgently the need to get back to the vault, which I thought was interesting because initially I'm like, wow, chilling with Juliette, having a good time, chatting, playing the harmonium. So I thought he must be confident that there's nobody else in the silo. But then when he rushed back to the vault, I was thinking, could there be someone that he's worried about? But then I actually started dialing back a little and said, you know what? It's probably this anxiety. And he probably has a little bit of agoraphobia as well, which is the opposite of claustrophobia because he's found comfort being locked in his vault for all this time. And going out into the silo, even though it's not a big expansive space with more than 200 feet of consecutive distance to walk, it's still bigger than inside the vault. So I do think it's an anxiety thing, a PTSD thing, and really where his comfort level is. And then him forgetting the numbers. At first, I thought maybe these were the numbers on the chalkboard and he's been locked out before, and that was him trying to find the numbers to get back in, and that's why he wanted Juliette to erase it, so she did not find the code. But then I took a closer look at the numbers, which is interesting because they either start with a 55 or an SS. I don't think 55 makes sense because the subsequent numbers do look like dates. We can see 1988, 1989, 1999. It looks like the last one might be 2031, which could potentially be when everybody went down to the silos or whatever this triggering event was on Earth. But when he blames Juliette for changing the key thing, it just all goes back to trust. And Solo very clearly does not have a lot of that, and why would he? He's been alone for 25 years. Although Juliette has not given him any reason to not trust him. Speaking of trust, why are people trusting Bernard? Meadows, I'm sorry, but you should have known better. As soon as Bernard gave her the invitation for dinner, I wrote in my notes, dinner invitation date equals sus. Sure enough, sus AF. Bernard poisoned the mushrooms and killed Meadows. I mean, I could see that coming from a mile away. Why did Meadows not? Did she really think she's getting the good tape and going outside? I think that is just pure insanity for a woman who's obviously very smart. Has the alcohol gotten to her? She really lowered her guard, which does make me think there must have been a very significant relationship between the two. But why did she step down? She said she did not want to be tethered to him. When I think of being tethered to him, at first I'm thinking, okay, she's obviously talking about her job as the IT Shadow. But given that she mysteriously disappeared for 4 days, did she mean tethered to him in a way where they were having a relationship and she could have become pregnant somehow with his child 25 years ago and disappeared to go and have some sort of medical procedure so she was not pregnant anymore? Why else would she have disappeared? I just am really trying to connect these dots. So I'll get more into that later. But again, back to the trust issues. No way she should have trusted Bernard. And why would Shirley and Knox have trusted Bernard to just, oh, okay, sure, we're going to go let you into a meeting with Meadows. No problem. Yeah, we'll just form a committee and talk about potentially letting you out to explore. never was going to happen. The fact that they turned the lights back on and trusted him and were obviously set up, why would anybody trust Bernard? This, for me, is the biggest suspension of disbelief, because if I'm literally anybody in Silo 18, there is no way I'm trusting this man with anything. He takes his job so seriously, and this episode proves that more than anything has, because he killed somebody that he clearly loved and even gave her the best possible death she could have with those VR goggles. So people need to stop trusting Bernard. We now have Sims getting back into Bernard's favor again. Him and his wife had this plan of impeaching Meadows, and you know what? It worked. And it looks like Sims is going to be in a cushy new position come next week. And one more trust thing, back to Silo 17 quick. Juliette put her life in Solo's hands. Talk about trusting him, but something is still not adding up. As I said, she was questioning why he was in that classroom. She also questioned why his eyes were like that. His eyes are different colors, which can be caused by an eye injury. What was the injury that caused it, and why wouldn't he tell her? Obviously, something must have happened after he was locked in that vault. We did have those dead bodies outside of it that didn't look quite as old as the other ones did outside. So I've got to think there were either silo raiders or people did remain in the silo and ended up getting in some sort of fight with him, which would have meant he left the vault, which is not very Solo-esque. So not really sure about that. But clearly, Juliette should not be trusting Solo either, because he has not proven to her that he is fully trustworthy given his behaviors. Juliette, however, has proven that she's been a pretty good ally for him. She's trying to help with his anxiety, explaining that she was afraid too when she went out to clean. And again, I don't think I can take another however many episodes of the Juliette Solo therapist patient situation. So either get the girl back to Silo 18 somehow or something. Something, please. I love Steve Zahn, but it's a little snoozy over in Silo 17 right now, you guys. So yeah, between these numbers, between Salvador's letter, between this talk of the cosmos, we are at least getting some little breadcrumbs. I'm just hoping that they're all able to assemble into a nice loaf of bread at some point here before I get too bored. I mean, of course, I'm going to finish the season, dying to know what happens. But, and I was just hoping for a little bit more here in season 2. We'll see what happens. I will say the one thing I did enjoy in Silo 17 in this episode was the underwater scene. It was definitely the most suspenseful of all. So that was great, but again, we've already seen Juliette being MacGyver. Now she's MacGyvering, Captain Nemoing, being all of the amazing people that can build things and do things and accomplish things, but she's not accomplishing what she really needs to do, which is getting back to the other silo. So, again, is she going to find tunnels? Get my girl back there. Or could there be some sort of secret room behind the vault? Maybe, as I mentioned, it could have some sort of trove of artifacts, but also, could there be a way from the vault into other silos? Is that the key? Is that something that Bernard doesn't want to know? If there was another door connecting 17 and 18 via some tunnel between these vaults that was more accessible than something that would be underground, wouldn't Bernard have also tried to go to the connecting vault to try to stop Juliette? He knew she made it into 17, and he's very clearly said he's afraid of what Juliette has seen out there. So if there is some sort of secret entrance, I'd assume he would have gone to it. And again, if there is, that is just really giving me the Fallout vibes, because as we know, there are connections between some of those vaults where the people with access are able to get there. So it's not out of the realm. The rebellion in Silo 18, Shirley and Knox, Walker and Carla, they are all a team in this. And yes, Knox and Shirley do kind of figure out that the names on the walls are probably from the people from Mechanical from past rebellions. They've figured out that they point the finger at Mechanical every single time. Okay, that's great. We figured out there's probably been more rebellions than just the one you know about. Okay, fine, great. But How can they actually break the cycle? It seems like they're so deep into it now, being framed for Meadows' death. How can they break the cycle? Is this a cycle that can just never be broken because it's in the order and because all of the heads of IT are unwilling to deviate from that plan? Bernard is following the letter of the book. And you know what? It's working. I'm assuming most people will believe that they did commit the murder, but again, with all of the unrest happening in this silo, Mechanical cannot be the only ones who are starting to question things, especially with Juliette being outside now. Things have very much shifted. And as the order said, when there's a failed cleaning, prepare for rebellion, this is very cyclical. And that scene at the end with the mob chasing them down the stairs, that was actually a visual I really enjoyed in this episode. As they're zooming out, this mob of people running down the stairs. I love the visuals and the set design of the silos. I think it's really cool that they can create this underground world in a very small area, confined area, and, make it and give it life, give it breath in this dark underground world. So I really appreciated the way that scene looked. And how are they going to get away? I don't believe that they will all be killed, but if they were, I do think that that will lead to a quicker rebellion than if they're able to hide out and then share the news that, hey, we didn't do this, and convince people of that. But either way, it does seem like it's leading to rebellion. At this point, I don't know how they could stop rebellion unless Juliette makes it back. But at this point, I'm starting to lose hope. What other devices will there be in Silo 17? Great, they had a harmonium, some parts for this pump. Juliette is MacGyver. But unless there is some sort of secret entrance, I don't know how she's going to make it back there to warn them in time. But they can't just end the season with another rebellion and a dead Silo. I mean, right? Also, just to touch on Billings for a second, he's, of course, investigating the deaths of missing Danny and Kennedy. And Kennedy's body being missing kind of makes me think, did they give him the eternal sunshine of the spotless mind medication so he forgot everything and relocate him into another part of the silo? How do residents receive a new person coming in, and aren't there going to be questions? And isn't it kind of sus when someone would show up on a different level, not really knowing who they are or remembering things from a certain time? I do think that is strange, and I'm wondering also how often they've had to do this. Very intrigued by what Billings is going to be able to uncover regarding Kennedy and his missing body. So we will see what happens. Also, a quick shout out to Kathleen Billings, who sent her husband with Ginger on his journey. We, of course, know he suffers from Silo syndrome. But it's funny because I was talking to one of my friends the other day about my mom's always been a very natural person, growing kombucha mushrooms, using ginger and cayenne and natural remedies whenever possible. So I was just talking to Jess at Matt and Jess TV about this the other day, so I thought it was really cute that ginger is still a big player in the apocalypse and really goes to show how these natural healing remedies still come into play hundreds of years later. So I just thought that was really cute that she's packing him a care package and the ginger was part of it. Random side note. Another random line I liked from this episode was when Walker said scared spitless. I think I might actually use that sometime, so hey, thanks for that one, Walker. The big thing in this episode was Bernard in his Gordon Ramsay era. He poisoned the mushrooms and killed Meadows. Again, not sure why Meadows ever accepted this dinner invitation. She's been insistent upon, okay, I'll talk to you once you get me the suit, once you get me the tape. He very clearly was not going to be giving that to her, and the fact she ingested any morsel of anything that Bernard gave her, big fail by Meadows. Never should have happened. But she was a loose cannon and she had to go. I just will not get over the fact that she believed Bernard. Why would she believe him? It all has to go back to their prior relationship, which obviously came into play the manner in which Bernard allowed her to die. They could have just sat around the table talking about stuff, but instead he gave her the opportunity to view the VR glasses. 2018 Costa Rica vibe. She's getting beach, she's getting frogs, she's getting monkeys. So you can tell that this obviously was a very difficult decision for Bernard, because if there ever was a person Bernard would be lenient towards, it would have been Meadows. And this shows that there is no deviation for Bernard for his job. His number one thing is protecting the silo, and he's not going to stop doing that at any cost. Very clear by killing Meadows, somebody, maybe even the only person who he's ever loved. And the fact that Meadows took the secret to her grave regarding Salvador Quinn's letter from 140 years ago, she was obviously able to decode it. But again, what was in the letter that was just so compelling? Is it tied into space and celestial beings and the stars and planets or something like that? Because it's got to be something so big that she wouldn't even tell Bernard in her dying moments. If she took this to the grave with her, is she the only one? Or is Lucas going to somehow come into play and help Bernard figure whatever this letter said out and get to the bottom of it? It's also interesting, though, because I would have expected Bernard to already have whatever information this is. It does seem like he was not privy to some of the things on the hard drive, but why? Shouldn't IT know everything? I guess even if they're keeping the head of IT in the dark, there has to be then some bigger overseeing leader or figure that does have that information. Because if not, how else would Bernard not know? We also had Common getting his big boy moment in this episode. Of course, him and his wife were very smart to come up with this impeachment situation that got things kind of churning, that caused all of the craziness when Mechanical came up for the meeting and led to them being able to frame them for Meadows' death. And it all plays into the order and blaming Mechanical just as they should. So really smart by Sims to get that into play, get himself back in Bernard's favor. And I'm wondering, will he end up uncovering something maybe before Bernard and be able to hold it over his head and obtain some bigger form of leadership and maybe officially become Bernard's shadow? So next week's episode is called Descent, which is interesting because it could allude to the fact that Mechanical is descending back into the down deep in Silo 18, but I'm kind of hoping it refers to Juliette gaining access to some subterranean tunnel or access lower within Silo 17 to get her over back to 18, which is where I need her to be. The episode description for next week: Sims finds himself with a new position. Shocker. Juliette learns Solo isn't being honest. Yeah, no shit. And Bernard and Lucas make an important discovery. What is the discovery? Could the discovery be related to Salvador Quinn's letter? Could it be related to something being hidden behind the vault? There being some sort of hidden room that connects the other silo and they somehow discover they can access Juliette and let her back in? All I'm going to say is if Bernard's the one that's letting Juliette back in, she's definitely getting the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind treatment or getting locked away somewhere, because obviously he cannot have her back in Silo 18 telling people what she saw. There will surely be a rebellion then. But at the same time, if she's coming back to warn them not to rebel, that could be the key to save Silo 18 and change this cycle and finally end it and not have generation after generation falling into the same fail. Could this be the generation that changes it all? Could Juliette Nichols be the big Silo hero? Could they be on another planet? What do these dates mean? So yes, we do have some questions that were raised, which is great. But again, I could use a little bit more. Definitely more in Silo 17. And hopefully the uncovering of bigger picture situations overall in this season. I'm hoping we get another big twist or reveal in episode 10 like we did in season 1. Again, I haven't read the book, so I literally have no clue what's happening. I'm cautiously optimistic that they will deliver. Obviously, these books are a big hit. There's got to be something happening in them to give them enough substance to have gained a TV show adaptation, so hopefully Apple TV Plus knows what they're doing. And either way, Rebecca Ferguson does a great job playing Juliette. We just need her back with her people. I think that's the most important thing right now. So, how are you feeling about season 2 of Silo? Are you feeling like the pacing is good? Do you think it's a little slow? What are your thoughts and theories on the dates, on Quinn's letter? I would love to know. So please go ahead, give this video a like, drop a comment, tell me what you're thinking. And if you have not already, please do hit that subscribe button. And since you already have Apple TV Plus, check out Bad Sisters. It is not sci-fi, but it is a dark comedy, and they've got a great mystery building this season. So if you're not already watching that and you need something heading into the holidays, definitely check that one out. There's also a lot of great TV coming up. We've got Dexter Original Sin coming on December 13th, which is a show I will also be covering. So be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. And then we are eating good in TV land in 2025. There are so many good shows returning, from The White Lotus to Severance to The Last of Us, The Night Agent. There are just so many to name. So I'm very excited for the year of television ahead and for reacting and reviewing to it here on my channel. So again, please hit that subscribe button. Don't miss my Silo coverage coming again next week. And thanks again for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. Media Melanie, clicking off.